Ranking the top 10 instant impact rookies for 2022. This is according to Chris Trapasso, CBSSports.com. Number 1 is Sky Moore. Honorable mention, David Bell. They go on to say, had Bell run a few tenths of a second faster at his combine or pro day, he'd have been a first-round receiver. You kind of, and I know his testing scores weren't great, but Quincy, this is a guy that catches the football and gets separation. Does he have the quote-unquote football speed?
When you watch him on tape, he doesn't seem slow, right? I would say this. And when I watch Anthony Schwartz, I am amazed he runs a 4.24, right? Like when you see him on tape, you're like, man, he does not look like he runs a 4.24 at all. He looks like he runs like a 4.4, 4.5. Same thing with Cooper Kupp, right? You'd be shocked to hear Cooper Kupp runs like a 4.64. The DeAndre Hopkins runs like a 4.6. Jarvis ran like almost a 4.8, which is almost disqualifying in his combine. Like a lot of these guys that could get open in the NFL, it's not because they're fast. I say this all the time. Getting open, especially in the NFL, is a talent in its own. It is not relying on how fast you are. It is not relying on how quick you are. It is just a skill that you either have or you don't, right? What David Bell reminds me of is what everybody kind of hoped Rashard Higgins would be, because he does have that Rashard Higgins thing in him where his tape is pretty good in college and he can get open, but you just don't see any of the speed. I think David Bell is a better athlete than Rashard Higgins ever was, and he's able to get open, and we'll find out in camp, right? Dudes like that can either get open or they can't get open. It might take him a couple of years because he's smaller, and he doesn't have the eye-popping tangibles or anything like that. So it might take him a couple of years to get settled in the NFL. I don't know if he's a right-away guy, but we'll know if he has potential when we see him out there and against the second and third team. If he's able to get open against those guys, eventually he'll probably be able to get open against NFL guys, because the tape is the tape on David Bell, and you don't play that well in college against top-tier competition, especially against Ohio State in that Purdue game that they won, and not have the ability to get open in the NFL. This is my opinion on it. I think we make too much of 40 times in some of this testing, especially when it comes to wide receiver, because I think we think that it means the most for that position, when if you look at the history of the position, how many of those 4.2 guys are elite wide receivers in the NFL? Like there is Tyreek Hill, and who else, right? Like the burning guys, the guys that, the John Rosses, the Dree Archers, the Anthony Schwartz, the ones that we say, oh man, no way anybody can cover them. They're 4.2 fast. They always get covered, right? Because you could there's ways to cover that in the NFL. But the dudes like Keenan Allen, who aren't fast at all, DeAndre Hopkins, those dudes who are slow, but find a way to get open, those dudes be open fast. Anquan Bolden. It's not rare that a slower wide receiver gets open in the NFL. I could list you examples after examples in the NFL. It's nice to have that 4.3 speed. I'm not saying it's unnecessary, right? Like, it's nice. Randy Moss is really good. But, it's not necessarily necessary, right? We could point to Jerry Rice. Terrell Owens was pretty fast, actually, so I put him in the fast category. But, Jerry Rice was slow compared to other wide receivers. Like, you can name tons of them that are relatively slow. Now, I'm saying slow, but if they ran a 4.6 in front of you, you'd be like, that's the fastest man I have ever seen in my life. But relative to other NFL players, it is technically slow, but it's fine.